Welcome to another exciting episode of the Late Night Hour, broadcasting from our secret, undisclosed, underground bunker location. The voice of freedom, and a warm welcome to you. Here on the Late Night Hour, we explore the topics not found on television.
You're listening to the Late Night Hour.
I feel that something big is coming. I don't get this feeling very often, but last night I spoke about a heightened level of violence and anger. Of course, the Kavanaugh Supreme Justice confirmation hearings are provoking that anger to some degree. But besides that, it feels that something big is going to hit during the month of October. And so if something happens, just remember you heard it here on the Late Night Hour, a prediction. Now, there are many predictions swirling around on the internet, and we probably need to touch on a few possibilities. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you feel like this heightened sense of anxiety? Something is about to happen? Of course, today it didn't help when the alert system sent a text message to all the microchipped citizens in the United States. A message from Big Brother. A message that you cannot turn off. It's a mandatory alert to your personal microchip. Some people call your personal microchip the smartphone, the cell phone for some of you. You see, they could not microchip everybody just yet. They forced microchips on some of the military personnel and some people from particular corporations if they want to keep their job. They forced microchipping on some citizens, prisoners. They're good guinea pigs. But they haven't been able to microchip the entire U.S. population. So what better way to microchip you than to promote and even provide a cell phone for your pleasure? And so we have all these people who carry their fancy cell phones around and can never be more than a foot away from their cell phone. And they're able to monitor your location using GPS. They're able to listen to you, take your picture, collect your voice, your thumbprint, your facial recognition. All of it is through the cell phone. And the best way to celebrate their scam, which I'm sure they laugh about, is they've microchipped the entire population and allowed you to pay for it. You pay to be microchipped. when you buy your phone, you buy your cellular service. And so it's the greatest scam ever conducted on the American people. And that's why President Obama, he so wanted to help you that he offered free cell phones as kind of a test gimmick. See if they could get the poor and the homeless using their free cell phones provided by the U.S. government. And this is all a process to create the microchipped population. And so you have to take some precautions. For example, you can buy a used phone. Some people buy these burner phones. But you have to realize that all the cell phones are also linked to your credit card. So it's not just the phone, but it's also the link to your bank account, which then links to your Social Security number. So there is a complete hierarchy of data that has to be connected. And it all feeds and is collected and stored on servers for 50,000 years or something. And so today, I think you got your text message. At least all my friends and associates and family says that they got their text message. And so it was around, what was it, 5 o'clock East Coast time. You got the text message. And of course, it's only a test. Nothing to get too concerned about. Simply a test. But the timing of this test is rather odd. And when I return, let's talk about some of the possible big events for the month of October. We'll be right back in a minute.
She walks into a winter day. She walks into a midnight haze. She will follow you. She will follow you. She will follow you. She will follow along to you.
You're listening to The Late Night Hour with Alex Abrams.
So for many people, working 8 hours a day, 40 days, 40 hours a week, it's difficult to be engaged in the daily politics in Washington, or in their state, or local communities. It's difficult to follow all the complexities and the information overload they throw at you with a constant stream of crazy news stories to hit you each and every day. And so here on the Late Night Hour, we try to analyze what's going on. And you're not really going to understand everything at first. It's going to take some time. So you have to kind of relax and look at the big picture. I know a lot of people think that our politics is about the Democrats versus the Republicans. And I'd like you to step back and look at it from a different perspective. And that being the philosophy of liberalism versus conservatism, and not get hung up so much on the name of the political party. Because this technique of kind of putting the citizens in a vice between extreme liberalism and extreme conservatism, and we're in the middle being squeezed, and this provides stress. And under stress, you're much easier to control. You always have a level of fear. And it may just be anxiety over these arguments and debates that are played out day in, day night on television. And so it's the big picture is they use the philosophy of extreme liberalism and extreme conservatism. That's the technique. And it's used in all the countries, not just the United States. And this is why you should not get hung up on the Democrats versus the Republicans. Yes, right now, the Democrats represent the extreme liberal philosophy, and the Republicans represent the extreme conservative philosophy. But of course, you don't see the even bigger picture that both parties and both philosophies promote socialism, also called collectivism. In other words, neither party is promoting capitalism in its true form. Capitalism has been taken off the table, and they are pushing socialism and collectivism in every country. And this is all by design to destroy the sovereignty of all nations, to create a borderless world and bring all these nations under this control of the one global government system. Now, those at the top are probably hidden. They're like families. Families that change their names all the time and we don't even know who they are. But by removing all of these sovereign nations, they can eliminate, and here's the key point, they can eliminate all the political systems. They're going to eliminate essentially your right to vote and have elective representation. That's the true target here. And to some extent, they promote how corrupt is the American political system. It plays right into their hand. They have the answer that has already been established, what they want, which is destruction of all national sovereignties, elimination for a large extent of elected governments. And so what is left? What is left is the government by the elite, by elected. Actually, let's step back, and I'll repeat it because I messed it up. They're going to remove elective government, and you will be governed by appointed, that's the key word, appointed leaders who are not accountable to the public vote. And so this is really going back. This is a deindustrialization of the world, putting us back into the Stone Age where the king would appoint a governor of that region. And they could not be voted out. They all reported to the king. And so this system they're trying to bring back is not a new world order. It's an old world order. And so we're getting to the point here. The point is you have both the Democratic and the Republican Party working to promote socialism, collectivism. And they're going to end up, as they see themselves, being in these appointed positions. And will they actually get appointed or eliminated? Will they get double-crossed? I would tend to think they may know too much and be double-crossed in the end. But we have many what they call deep state agents working in the government for this secret agenda of creating the collective universal citizen, also known as socialism. And they are working to that objective secretly. That's why both the Republican and the Democratic Party, to a large extent, do not represent the people of America. They represent themselves. They have sold us all out so they can work to make the United Nations and the WTO and all these international organizations more powerful over even our local communities. They are working day and night to subvert capitalism, to destroy this country. And that's one reason the national debt is ran up every year, regardless who is elected. If you look at the chart of the growing national debt, they are trying to bankrupt America. And so this is all kind of part of the plan. And it really seemed that they intended to kind of rotate between the Republicans, like the Bush family, and then the Democrats, like the Clintons. And then they had Obama in there. And they also had Jimmy Carter and Reagan and Nixon and Ford. But they're all working to the same plan. They're all controlled, compromised in some way or another. I think we can spend another late night hour about how each president has been compromised. What do they hold over their head? For example, a lot of people don't know. There was a governor or senator, he was on the Warren Commission in the JFK assassination. His name is Hale Boggs. And he went up in an aircraft and disappeared. And who drove Hale Boggs to the airport? None other than Bill Clinton. So most people believe that Hale Boggs was about to squeal on the Warren Commission. And of course, he had that plane accident. Bill Clinton was part of his elimination plan, and Bill Clinton was rewarded. But he was always in jeopardy of being exposed over the Hale Boggs incident. And so that's what I talk about. Each of our presidents, generally related to the King of England, that's a whole different subject, but they've all been compromised. So I think it's good that we take a different late night hour because I have some alerts I want to tell you about tonight. But we'll take a different late night and talk about how each president had been compromised and that's the way they get into office. Now, Trump, they had a lot of things on Trump. There's no question about it. But for some reason, anything they throw at Trump, it's not sticking. And the only thing that we can guess is that Trump has some inside help. Trump would, under normal conditions, be entirely destroyed by this weekly onslaught of scandals, like the Russian collusion. That's not sticking too well. So they tried the porn star Stormy Davis. I don't know her name, but they tried that. That didn't stick very well. Now, today, they're talking about Trump taxes and tax fraud. So you see, they're just jumping from scandal to scandal, trying to get one to stick with the American public, who will demand the impeachment of President Trump. But people are wising up to this game, and people are wising up that we did not elect Trump based on his morality. We elected him to clean this swamp. And when I say he may have inside help going for him, I would assume that is the military. That essentially all our corruption and corrupted leaders in Washington, D.C. have themselves been taken over by the military. The military in some countries would just come out and say, we're taking over and we have arrested your leaders and we are taking control of this government because it's too corrupt. But with all the elitist control over the media, it would be a pretty hard strategy to do that, given how big the United States is. It works maybe in a little tiny country like a Sudan or someplace small where they can control the information. But the United States being so big, I don't think the military can come right out and say, we have taken over control of this government. So this is my theory that the military has taken control. When I say my theory, I mean lots of people have talked about this possibility. It's nothing new. I'm just saying that I'm kind of leaning toward embracing this now, that we are under military rule. And this falls perfectly on what happened yesterday, because there was a bioweapon attack against the Pentagon. So somebody or some group tried to take out Mattis and Richardson, and I talked a lot about this just yesterday about Ricin. And okay, so we're a day after somebody has attempted an attempted attack on the Pentagon and our military leaders. They didn't target the politicians. You see, they went after the military. So for all we know, who is operating this operation to take out military leaders? Is it some of the Congress and senators involved in this? So it feels like there's like infighting between the corruption or the deep state and the military. Now, there is good reason why the military would be much more pro-America, America first. That's because, yes, there are corrupt and corruption in the military. But there are also a lot of very good patriots that aren't in the military for a buck, but for the ideology that America is the last country of true freedom and liberty. where I'm allowed to rant each night, as long as I do so from my underground bunker where it's safe. But I'm still allowed to connect and spread my information out there into the world. And so I still enjoy this freedom of America. And when you have military patriots that love this country, they realize that their families live here too. And they don't really want to move to another country like many of these corrupt leaders of ours bail. I'm thinking of Obama. Doesn't he have land, or didn't he buy a palace in Saudi Arabia? I believe he did. And the Bushes in Argentina. They all buy their escape locations. Not that it will matter, because they will be hunted down, just like the Nazi war criminals were. They can run, but they can't hide. And so I'm not too concerned that our corrupt leaders have their little escape islands and escape complexes around the world. They'll bail like rats on a sinking ship. If the United States goes under, they'll be running for cover. And I'm talking about every former president. But the point is, there's a good number in the military you cannot buy. They are in it for the philosophy, for the ideology that America is a very great country. Regardless what the elite may have designed this country for, and regardless how they're trying to destroy it, many people see the true writing on the wall, that America is a great country. You ask for proof, everybody's trying to come in here. The Americans aren't trying to escape to other countries. Only the elite have their dual citizen set up so they can run. But that's not what I'm talking about. Most people in America, despite how terrible the media makes our country out, most people enjoy it here and have a decent life. There are problems, but those problems weren't created by American citizens. The destruction of Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles, the destruction of these cities was done by traitors from within, by taking those important jobs and shipping them to other countries by design. So that is the Boeings and the Googles and the Apples and all of these multinational corporations that are setting up shop in the cheapest slave labor country they can find, all to make a buck. They have no loyalty to America. All they care about is worshiping the dollar bill. And as I said, the military, a good number of them, stand on principle, and they cannot be bought. For example, that's why I don't run any commercials on this show. I don't really want to be beholden to any entity. I want to speak my mind freely and get the information out to you, our loyal listeners. We have to cover some of the important scenarios that might happen. And I'll tell you why they just might happen in October. I'll be back in just about 1 minute. If you want to get your favorite beverage, we'll take a little break here.
You're listening to The Late Night Hour with Alex Abrams.
The Voice of Freedom. The Voice of Freedom is all about putting a pebble in the pond, letting the ripples of freedom translate out, echo. And so we record these shows and we deposit them on a multitude of distribution channels and let the shows stand for themselves. It's live. I seldom edit anything. And this is one little place that you can go to join in open and honest discussion. And I invite you to give us a call anytime, 515-602-9663. We get a lot of nice people that call into our show, and I love to talk with you. Perhaps you can expand on some of the subjects I throw out there. But why might something big happen in October? Because there's always been something called the October surprise. And the October surprise, you can look for that term on any search engine except Google. You can look for that term, the October surprise. And throughout history, there has been some type of October surprise to do what? To throw the election in a particular direction in November. And so there could be a significant October surprise this year. The stars and the cards, they're all lining up to, I think, explode this month. Already in October, we've had the text alert and a ricin attack, a bioweapon attack on the Pentagon. And the news isn't even covering it. In the old days, they'd be all over this ricin attack on the Pentagon. But the news isn't even going to talk about it. And they are complicit in the destruction of America, or the attempt to. The media has a lot to answer to, just by the stories they avoid talking about. For example, I talked yesterday about the Kavanaugh accuser being a CIA agent. But that's not surprising that the mainstream media doesn't talk about that, because they're CIA agents, if you haven't figured it out. That's what Project Mockingbird revealed when those documents were released about Project Mockingbird. Most of the anchors you see on TV are CIA assets or CIA agents. Take your pick. The point is, it's all part of the propaganda engine. And oftentimes, it's not the stories they cover, but rather the stories they ignore. And so, again, we've barely entered into October, and we're already seeing something happening. The other day, I spoke about the firing of Rod Rosenstein, who looks like Himmler's son, according to some posts that have been put out on the net. They have photos of Himmler and photos of him, and they look alike. And so people are saying that he, again, has snuck into our government. And is it possible? Well, it's quite possible. It seems like links to all these old Nazis still pop up here and there. So it wouldn't surprise me. They said Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany, is Hitler's daughter. So, I mean, there's another one for you. That's a subject for another late night hour. What's the point? Pretty strong predictions that Rod Rosenstein will be fired. Now, the other day, evidently, we've had a real slimeball named James Baker called in to give testimony to Congress. I think regarding the Russia collusion and the dossier and all of that circus. But James Baker does not get put on the hot seat too much. He's one of the Bush cronies. He's got a lot of very dubious links. Regardless who's president, James Baker and Kissinger and Brzezinski, they're always lurking the halls of D.C. And Baker is definitely a very corrupt individual. And so it's interesting that he was called in to give testimony. And this is sealed testimony, so the press can't figure out what he's talking about, unless, of course, James Baker leaks it. And then he could be in contempt, but that's hard to prove sometimes. But it's been quiet. James Baker was behind closed doors giving testimony. And now today on the internet, they published a summons that is summoning none other than Jeff Sessions to go in and talk to Congress on his role. And this all connects up with the firing of Rod Rosenstein. And it's quite possible that the firing could be Rod Rosenstein, Jeff Sessions. How about Robert Mueller? All of them. How about the Inspector General, Horowitz? There's a lot of these senior executive service members, who many say are the deep state, senior executive service. There are some web links, and I'll have our webmaster put up the links that you need, and that is the links to the senior executive service memberships, the Trilateral Commission memberships, the Bilderberg Commission, the Bilderberg Group memberships, the Council on Foreign Relations memberships. Those are probably the four main subversive organizations in the United States. Now, we could start bringing in the Gates, Carnegie, Ford, Rockefeller Foundations, the Aspen Institute. So we could broaden that significantly. We could also add, of course, Columbia University and Stanford and